I've got the ultimate true story on how we met, and I'm gonna tell it right now. I got I got Your fireplace looks great. Are you happy about the fireplace? I'm gonna tell the story because you're originally is it? It's gonna be a short episode. This has got to be. I'm saying this is 1999, and okay, so you were already out there for a year before we met, is what you're saying. So the timeline is it works kind of on. You know who would actually? Obviously, Mike Robinson, Groove Robber, who booked me to play out at the party in Vancouver, would obviously truly know the answer. And as well as Billy Boy, I'm assuming, I think he's tuned in right now. He'd probably know the answer as well. I don't keep the chats live during the show, so I can't see what people are saying. This is a 2 minute intro. We haven't even gotten to it. I played in Vancouver, and we all gave it. It was what we would call a tremendous evening, and um and I was the first one awake the next day. It seemed like, and I was always the first one to sleep, and then the first one awake. That's me. Um, it's true though. So I woke up, did my day, everything's going all right. My guest tonight is Jungle Souljah. Please welcome to Utility Room, and this is the story of how we met, which is totally awesome. Jamie uh, was in the house, and we kind of woke up together, hung out, got along. Everything's going awesome. Jamie was, yes, yes, in the house. I can't remember the name of the street is right now. In the house, yeah, it was a big house. I think at one point, and I talked about this on Check's show. Check had like a studio set up in the basement. Like it was weird. I feel like Groove Robber had his room, and then Billy Boy had his room, and then the rest of the house was kind of common rave area. It wouldn't be unusual for you to end up in that living room and be like, "Oh, cool, here's Dave the drummer. What's going on?" Like that would happen. You know what I mean? Like it was that type of house. Whoever was touring or would be in Vancouver would somehow end up or around this. So let me get to this because this is actually one of the most memorable gig nights that I've had, where I was out and doing a show because it was totally not planned. Groove Robber was the DJ that was supposed to play it. I believe it was called Soul Kitchen at Tommy Africa's. Yep. Okay. And sometime around, I'm gonna say 8 o'clock, he ended up at night, rolled out of bed, and just came downstairs and looked at us like, I can't do this show. And like a mouse. I'm like, I can't. You want to do it? I'll go do it. He just kind of looked at me for a second. He was like, "All right," you know. He looked at Jamie and he's like, "You drive him?" And you were like, "Sure, I'll fucking drive him. Let's go." And we had the coolest drive on the way up to the mountain. I just remember because I'd never gone up. It was my first time being in Whistler, and it was one of the earlier trips that I made to British Columbia. So the world is very new. Incredible highway at that point because this was pre-Olympics. So the highway drive was actually it was graded as one of the most dangerous drives in North America. Uh, at some instances, the twists and turns of the road, the highway up to the mountain, there would be a drop off, 1,000, 2,000 feet drop off, no problem, and no fence, some type of little dinky guardrail. Obviously, this has been changed since then. The Olympics have modified the road. They've blasted through the mountains instead of this winding, crazy adventure up the mountain. It's more straight, um, and more than one lane. This was the other thing about the highway is that it was one lane going up and one lane coming back, and that was it. Um, so we made our way to the mountain. We get there, everything is super awesome. Um, I get into the club, place is absolutely slammed. No room. Yeah, and Sunday night. So it was known, I believe, as like an industry night, but then it just got known as the night, and it was like almost like a fuck Mondays type of attitude. And people would roll in there and do it all up. And that was the energy. It's another scenario of where if there was a touring talent at that time, more often than not, that person would stay the Sunday and end up in Whistler, and stay the Monday and not fly home until Tuesday. Um, I'm trying to get to. Yeah, I'm trying to get to. So look, the place is packed. I wasn't even on the schedule. So when I walk into the room, like, you have to understand, back in the late '90s, no one really knew who the DJs were. I mean, you had a copy of Mixmag, and if you were popular enough and you ended up in a story in Mixmag, then there would be the name and the face that would make the association. But more often than not, it would just be a name. You'd see the name, you'd know the name. Maybe you had a mixtape or a record, something, and a memory that's where the jog would happen, and that's why you would go and subscribe to the evening and become a part of it, right? So if I'm walking through the club and getting up into the decks, it's not like people are like, "Oh, cool." The guest DJ that I paid money to see tonight, which instance was not me, but was going to be me. They're there, and there was excitement. So I mean, like, literally going to the booth, there's no fanfare except for what was naturally happening in the club, which was crazy energy. Yeah, crazy energy. I wouldn't. I don't know. I don't know that detail. So that was just it. This is the first time I'd ever experienced it before. We're going. Firstly, the booth was really, it was kind of floor level. Maybe there was a step up, but it was, but the dance floor was congregated around the booth, the whole room, and the booth wasn't exactly in the middle of the dance floor, but it wasn't exactly not either. It was kind of off to the side, but still, like people were literally dancing around the whole booth. This, by the way, is really amazing. I mean, it's great for connection. It's great for visual. The DJ, the performer, becomes really a part of the party. I can't endorse this type of setup enough. Again, back then, it sounds kind of funny to say it because I don't know what might happen now in 2021 and beyond, but it wasn't a whole lot of trolling. So more, you wouldn't get like, I don't remember the mixer. I just remember that there was a light bulb that was just a little bit on top, above my head, and if you punched on that compressor and limiter in a nasty way and started redlining the mixer, where the sound system was not appreciative of it, and it was just at that point of where saturation was about to happen, real crunchy, crispy thing, um, the light bulb would illuminate. And it would literally light up that whole area. It'd be like someone turning on a light in a nightclub. So you knew that if you were fucking up, you'd see it. And if you were ignoring it, the bar manager would have seen it, and he was in the booth in a hot second looking and be like, "That goes down now." And I'd never experienced that before. It was a real thing, and I've been guilty more times than I could shake a glow stick at of running that red line. And it's because out of excitement, like I'm in it with you. I'm like louder, harder, faster. That's me. So like in the mixer, I want to go. And it makes you more conscious. I appreciate it. It's a good thing that you hired me and paid me, which is what I'm trying to get at. I didn't. I do. I remember I only played for like an hour and 10 minutes, and you came to me, and out of all the things that you talked to me about, you were really specific about it. And I remember you spoke to me like it was almost like it was like shaman wisdom. You came to me and you were like, I can't remember the verbatim of it, but you were like, whatever you do at 1 o'clock, you need to stop the music, because if it's 101 and the police come, the club is going to be in jeopardy. It's really strict in Whistler, because you were telling me about some classic law that was initiated from a pastor or a priest. Am I saying this right? Or whoever originally wrote the partying liquor laws of Whistler that are still intact today, because it's still a 1 o'clock shutdown on Sunday. Be like the party can, you have to imagine like it's because the witching hour happens and I'm just stepping up to get started, and it's like by the 12:30 mark the room is doing the washing machine thing, like everyone's is with it, and I'm like, okay, I guess we're stopping now. You're kidding me.
Yeah.
Wow, you've been muted this entire time. Thanks. I appreciate that. Yeah. It's
Shit, you hear my
it's
jokes? I
okay.
was
I feel
talking
like
shit about you
we've
the
been
whole
warming. I
time.
feel like we've been
I
warming
was
up
like
for the last
the
30
fucking
minutes.
gears, bro. Oh my
Um,
God. We have to restart. No, it's cool. It's cool. I love hearing your
oh,
voice, Josh. You're like a magician on the mic. You're like amazing.
am I?
Just tooting your horn.
I come here. I
Well, give me
just
a hug, bro. Give me
I
a hug.
want you so bad. I do. I haven't seen you since last summer. I'm
Yeah, well, like just the fact that you talk about Tommy's and like it was like a church. I mean, like I can remember everything my whole thing started there. Like everything that I have to do in Whistler started at Tommy's, and Tommy's was the birthplace of everything I ever did in Whistler. And it wasn't quite the birthplace, but it was one of them. And I watched it evolve, I watched it change, and I mean those Sundays, because if we step back a minute for a sec, I mean you're the interviewer, but I'm just gonna
no,
roll
no, no. This is lovely.
because the crazy thing is, okay, so I'm a Barrie boy. So I grew up in Barrie, born and raised. My parents are Newfies. I was born in Toronto and moved to Barrie when I was like 9 months old. Anyway, so in my older years, like when I was 15, 16, that's when Steve and Wayne Mealing were doing their thing and doing the dose thing. And, because I was a Barrie boy. So um, that's how I became known of the rave scene and in jungle music. Let's say Jungle Soldier is my DJ name, but we can get to that later. But yeah, like it's crazy because you mentioned Groove Robber earlier, and the reason why was I was in BC. Well, it's a long story, but a part of that reason was the first party that I ever threw in my life was with a couple of friends of mine, Justin and Jeff Chow, in Toronto, actually, when I lived in Toronto back in the day, at the Opera House. So we were gonna throw a party, okay, and we said, what are we gonna call our company? And we might have been a little bit tipsy on the MDMA tip, and we said, well, we should call our company MDMA, and it came to fruition that our company was going to be called Most Strange Musical Atmosphere. That was it. I don't know if you remember this. Do you remember the company MDMA? And we
Yeah, of
threw our
course.
first party at the Opera House, and the headlining DJ was Groove Robber. Okay. And Groove Robber, at the time, I had no idea who this guy was. I was just a guy. And so anyway, he's coming across the country on a train back then. He didn't even fly in. I don't know why he took the train, but he took the train. He was coming to Ontario. And,
Isn't that like a
and
4 or 5 day ride?
yeah. I don't even know. It was long.
And
Anyway,
it's much more expensive than a flight, isn't it?
I really don't know,
I know
Jello.
I'm
I
aware
don't
of this
remember back
service.
then much.
It's a beautiful train. Like it's a specific train on Via. They've got like a first class car and it's got like an
Sure.
observation deck. I'm not kidding. It's great. It's got great food. Had steak
But
one
the
night,
crazy
lobster the
thing is,
next.
I don't know. You can Google the shit. You can Google this. He was coming across on the train, Josh. I don't even think you know this story.
No,
The
I'm
fucking
blown away by
the
the idea. I mean, if you're
train.
stopping
The
along the way
train.
and doing a tour, I get it.
No, he wasn't. He was coming to us. The
No, it's
fucking train
5 days to a show,
derailed.
man. It doesn't.
The train derailed in the middle of a field in Saskatoon or somewhere along the way. The train flipped over. It derailed off of the tracks.
Holy
And
shit.
tells me the story that he got out of the train. He was okay. And it was like zombie apocalypse. People were walking around all fucking cut up. People were dying. And this happened on his way to our gig. And anyway, he got to our gig. We did the show. It wasn't that successful because it was the Opera House. It was small. But yeah, that's how I met Groove Robber. Now, I did
Holy
my
fuck.
rave. It's
What
crazy,
were you?
right?
What so like? I'm just trying to like. Were you guys? What did you guys do? Like when you saw him? Like how did you like?
Well, I don't
Did he
know,
get
man.
back on another train?
We were
Like what?
kids.
Like
We
what
were high.
happened?
I was like 18. I don't know. We just dealt with it. We were like, wow, well, that was crazy. Like
I
you
know.
made the
I
game,
mean,
you know?
what happened with him? Like he gets off the train. They zoom another train. Everyone just got back on and zoomed away.
I
Like what?
honestly don't remember, but I know that
Holy
that was
shit!
that's what happened, and then he got to us. I don't know, but he told us a story how crazy he was that like he was in the middle of a field and somewhere in the middle of Canada, and the train had fucking derailed, and people were flipped out of the train and shit. It was crazy,
That sounds
crazy.
fucking terrifying. Is what it sounds like a nightmare. Really.
Yeah.
I no.
So I did my stint in Toronto as a rave kid and did my thing and I literally like I left Toronto because I'd been there for 2 years raving and I was like I'm gonna move to BC, like I'm gonna do this thing, I'm gonna like I need to leave Toronto or I'm gonna kill myself, I'm not gonna survive many more years doing this. And at the time I was dating a girl, Stacy, and she's like, well let's go to BC, let's try. And I mean back then I didn't like you when you first went to BC. I hadn't traveled the world. I was like, what BC? That's crazy. Like, what am I going to do in BC? And anyway, I moved back to
Oh
Barrie,
fuck.
my thing for a bit, and then we flew to Vancouver, and I actually lived in Groove Robber's house in Vancouver. 4344 Fraser Street. This was a house that was on Fraser Street. It still exists today in the crazy market of Vancouver. It's a house that's basically in between uh, a bunch of retail spaces. It's like retail. The house is in the middle. So you could this is the ultimate party house because you could just party whenever. And I don't know if Billy lived there or not, Billy Boy or not at that time, but Mike and he invited me and he had an extra room. I think the rent was like $400 a month or something.
Imagine
And he had
that.
his deck set up. Lived in Mike with Groove Robber, and that's how I got introduced to the BC scene, was because I was living with Mike. But obviously, Mike had already like Vancouver already had a thing going on. Like they had Mike had his ET Bros. They were doing Magic Mountain and a bunch of shows. They had their club night thing happening. There was Twisted, doing their shows. There was Excerpt, Marky Mark and JC doing their things. So there was a big scene already happening. I feel like that whole moment in my life was a bit like, like because I only lived at that house for 6 months. I think I moved there in March and then I left in September to move to Whistler. But I feel like the stories and everything that evolved around that house and the parties that we have, it felt like it was like an eternity. It was pretty cool. So Mike was my introduction to BC, but then he moved out to that other house with Billy on First Ave after, and the rest is history. I guess you would say.
When when was like the move to Whistler? When did that happen?
Well, the ultimate goal was Whistler. I mean, Vancouver was
You didn't want
boring.
Vancouver to be like the station. You wanted to be the mountains.
No, but you got to remember, I was like 19. I had moved to Toronto when I was 17, and then I lived there for 2 years. And if I lived in Regent Park in the shithole downtown, I had rats in my place, and the guy upstairs, a bunch of university guys that used to rave upstairs, and then I was like, I was out. I was like, I gotta change my life. So then I was like, but I know Groove Harbor. I'm gonna go west. But I was like, I want to go to Whistler. Like I was going to go there to snowboard and be a ski bum for a bit. And so yeah, that was March 1998, and then September 1998, I moved to Whistler. Now, it's pretty crazy because I think the evolution of where I got to where I was because of the decisions I had made when I was going to try and live in Whistler. And one of those decisions was like, even back then, it was difficult to find housing. Now, what I had done, I was I was renting like super high end cars. Well, for back then, I guess I wasn't renting Lambos or anything, but I was renting nice cars. And what I would do is I would put a nice shirt. I was still 19, but what I would you look at the paper and was starting. It was like house for rent, 2 bedroom, 1 bedroom, blah blah blah. And I was like, you know what? Fuck this. Like I'm going for the jam. So what I was looking for was like a 4 bedroom house, a big house, like a mansion or something that I could move into with a bunch of people. And so I would go look at these houses in a nice car, in a shirt and tie, and pretend I was rich. I just told these people that I was like, my father was wealthy or whatever. And the one house I went to was 9540 Emerald Drive. You've been to that house, the A-frame, the big
Yeah.
A-frame house. And I rolled up, and it was like with my nice car, and I just spoke the language, man, and and I got the house. Anyway, like even part of that journey, I was like, I remember like going into Whistler, and I was sitting there, and I was like, I got a coffee, and I like was like, oh man, what am I gonna do? Like, I found this place, but I need to fill the house. And I came out of the coffee shop, and I was walking into the taxi loop. Anyone that's been to Whistler knows a taxi loop. And there was this really cute girl sitting there. And I was like, yo, what's up? What's up? My name's Jamie. How are you? And she's like, cool, yeah. I'm like, what's up? She's like, yeah, I'm like looking for a place. And I was like, oh, like I'm looking for a place too. And I just found this dope house out in Emerald, and you should totally be my roommate. Like you give me your email or whatever. And I mean, I think back then email was still pretty new, but I locked her in, and she ended up sending me money. She's like, I'm crazy for sending some random dude, because she had to go back to Ontario, my
The whole thing
cash
sounds rather
for this
whimsical.
place. Yeah, and then the other person that I lived with right away was Chris Laycock, who was actually one of the founders of Dose. So Chris and I got to know each other through Stacy, the girl that I moved out with. So I was like, I locked in Chris, and then I found out that Bob Van Inglethorpe, who you might know Bob, he used to be my roommate in Whistler, small, short Dutch guy, super stocky, super fun guy. He was my roommate in Toronto, and he was one of the guys back in the day that lived above me and help support my living. He was available, so we ended up renting this fucking mansion ish, 2,400 square foot A-frame house in Whistler. Me, Chris Laycock, Stacy, and Bob, and that's how I moved to Whistler. So it was pretty crazy, and we like place was pimp, as you know. It was like overlooking Whistler Blackcomb out in Emerald. So pretty fun, actually. It was pretty
So
dope,
you're up
actually.
there, you're
And
in
that
the
house
A-frame
was up
house,
there.
you're with your homies. Everything's
Yeah,
working out. You
yeah.
now think to yourself you want to DJ, or you're now thinking to yourself you want to throw parties? Are you thinking to yourself both things?
Well, the DJ thing will come in a bit, but so that thing, like it landed for a bit. So I had a job with Whistler Blackcomb. I was working at the top of the mountain. Back then, I was a massive chronic. I'm actually highly allergic to marijuana
You
now in
smoked
my old
ganja
age,
back
which is
then?
fucked up.
I don't remember this.
I was crazy going
Okay,
ahead.
okay.
Um, you smoke it for
Yeah, I don't remember
days.
this at all.
Wake up and
I
smoke
think
it,
I
go
feel like as
on
far
and
as I've
smoke.
known you, I've seen you
Anyway,
smoke a
so
cigarette. That's it.
yeah, no, I was massive herb
Okay.
head back then. But so back then, I mean, there was Czech doing his thing at at Tommy's, and then there was obviously Matt the Alien. He was always doing his thing. Matt had lived there for at least probably 10 years or so. I mean, and so there was some things happening, but I was just getting situated, getting comfortable in my pad. Now things moved pretty quickly. I think Chris Laycock moved out pretty quick, and then my best friend Brandon Thorson, who I started J&B Productions with, he moved in, and then another friend Brandon moved in, and then Bob moved downstairs, and Todd moved in, which Todd and at the time, I mean, in Whistler, you would go to Czech's place, Tommy Africa's, you go to his show, but it was a big after hours scene, right? Like, so people would go to people's houses, like you would just go to people's houses, and down the street at that time was it was called the Greenhouse or the Green Dog Productions, and these guys Sasha and Yugi used to throw these parties at their house, but everything was except for Czech break night, which well, that wasn't always breaks, but Czech was obviously someone that I knew well when I used to go to the Comfort Zone and from the Dose Boys, and I used to buy him Grand Marnier on the rocks. It cost me $20. Another story for that. But the Green Dog House, we would go, and these guys were jamming. Like, we were like, fuck, like they'd have 100 people in their house, and we're like, I was like, man, but it was all house music, and we were like, I've been a junglist since '95. This is the first time I heard Mickey Finn and CV Hyper D on a mixtape. I was hooked. I was like, I spent all my time in the jungle room in the raves in Toronto. So I was like, yeah, I mean, this is great, but like, when are we going to hear some jungle? And it just didn't happen, Like, Czech's night was the only night you'd hear some breaks, and then the reality was we were like, well, we've got this dope house. It's like a big A-frame, wicked dance floor. And I think I was just like, back then, I didn't know much about production or promoting shows. And I was like, yo, Groove Robber, like, what should we do? And he's like, yeah, you need to just rent a big system and put it in your house and throw a party. And I was like, what? Yeah, let's do that.
Right.
Because we wanted to hear jungle and breaks, right? Like, we wanted to hear music that we loved. And yeah, I think I remember I remember the first show we did. It was like, it wasn't, like, I mean, house parties in Ontario in Barrie were like house parties. You threw a house party and someone had a CD in a ghetto blaster. But then I was like, no, we're gonna step this shit up. Like, we got the decks out. We're gonna like book headliners. We're gonna do this. I don't remember who else played. We actually we rented these massive speakers, and we just rinsed out, and we were like, yeah, like this is it. Like, we just got the itch, It's like, this is how it's gonna go. Yeah,
It
yeah.
went well.
It was sick. It went well, and
It
we
went
just did
well.
house parties. It went well, and because Bob had lived downstairs, so we didn't have any neighbors, and the neighbors hated us. I mean, they used to call the police all the time, but yeah, it went real well, and you know, we used to like do these parties, and like how we would identify ourselves as the owners of the house is we used to like go to the army surplus store, and even then when we started doing the shows at the Alpenrod, we would all dress up in camo. So we would buy a different color camo outfit, with hats, shirts, pants, and then like people knew that the owners of the house were the guys that were in camos. You didn't fuck with those guys. It was like we were in charge. You knew who was in charge in the house, so we could like delegate the party as we went.
When you start going into venues and
Yep.
making it legit.
Yeah.
No, I'm asking.
When?
Yeah, I'm asking when. I'm sorry if that didn't
When?
come out right. Maybe it's my fault.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
when
That's what
did you
we're making a
when
statement.
did you move from the houses and turn it into something? Because I mean, I did play
Well,
at a
the thing that
house
happened
party that
was,
you had, but it happened after we did our
yeah,
party
yeah.
night.
But like you said, it feels like an eternity, those months and the year and years, because I only originally lived in Whistler for 2 years. But so we did the house parties, and then at the time there was a guy named DJ Tone. Now DJ Tone was doing these monthly outdoor raves, full moon parties, and I mean he was doing them until COVID hit almost. I mean the guy it's a legend in Whistler, and so he was doing these great outdoor parties. I mean, and you've been to BC, so you don't need to go far up a logging road in order to have just this beautiful spot where you could throw a party. And so the first party that I ever did, actually, I think Groove Robert Czech played, and we just like went and scoped. And now that I think about it, like, and where we actually did it, it was not very far off a logging road. It was like actually where the Olympics ski jumping is now, just before there. We just like, me and Brandon went on in a car, and we kind of went up a road, and we're like, oh, here's a spot with an open area. And we're like, we're gonna throw a party here, and we did flyers, and we threw the party. And I remember going to set up for the party. I think it was going to rain or something. And that's the thing back in Whistler back in then, it wasn't like their internet. You didn't really know how many people were going to come. You like had to do flyers and you had to like promote it, but there was no way of knowing how many people were going to show up. Like you never knew. And I remember going there and like climbing a tree with a tarp wrapped, and I had tied the rope around my arm, and I was climbing this massive tree trying to put up a tarp to cover people in case it rained. And the wind blew the tarp. I almost fell out of a tree. and but the party was pretty successful. I think we got a couple hundred people.
But
But we ended up throwing check through down, and then I was like, okay, now I got the itch. And then what happened was there was a new venue in town in Whistler called the Alpenrock. And if you remember, if anyone knows Whistler, it was like pretty sleepy town. But this Alpenrock was like this Zurich uh, style venue that they built. There was a bowling alley, there was a bar, there was an arcade room, and you played there a few times for me. Remember back in the day, it was underground,
that
and
was
and
that
and
was that was the jam that with me and Rob G,
you,
and
Rob
the
G,
booth was in this like
Gargantuan
enclosed.
Sound Machine.
I remember this,
Yeah, it
yeah.
was like a little cabin.
Yeah.
Well, that place was running, and yeah, I jumped in, and I actually became the entertainment manager, and I started doing that while I was working for the Mountain, and then we started booking big shows. But this was at the time it was the biggest venue in Whistler. It was 700. You could put 700 people in there, and I mean Garfinkel's is only a 500 person venue. Tommy's is only 200. So it was like it was a jam, but it was like voted the worst venue in Whistler, or the most hated thing, because people didn't like new, right? Like that there was these established nightclubs, but me and Brandon took a risk, and we were like, yeah, let's do it, because we can do something big in this venue. And we were able to do a couple of really 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 big shows in there, which included yourself. I think DeCozy played. I had Ice-T play. Funk Dubious played for me at one time. Swollen Members, when they were big back in the day. I mean, it was the jam, I actually became my full time job at one point, because in the New Year's of 2000, I had a job, and I had to work at the top of the mountain, but it was a Millennium, and that party that we threw on the Millennium at our house was like the most epic party ever, right? Because we had planned it in advance. We were going to work 12 hours and then go to our party, and it was 130 people. There was 90 girls invited, 40 guys, and it was $75 a head. And when you came to the house, you got a bag of weed and mushrooms, and it was free mushrooms, weed all night, and and all you could drink. But I got fired because I left my job that night. So then I became and I was like, fuck it. I mean, I can't. I thought we all thought the world was going to end, but we
Fuck.
partied for like 2 days. We put tinfoil on the windows to block out the windows, because we literally went for a couple of days. But that was the beginning of J&B, I guess you would say, and J&B is Jungle and Breaks, or Jamie and Brandon. So yeah.
Did you find that there was specific challenges in doing these shows in a town like Whistler where people are transient? Did you find it a challenge to do branding for the promotions, or was it the same as you think it would be anywhere else?
Yeah, it was challenging because even back then, like in Whistler was like you said, it's transient. But the good thing about the transient market back then is when you talk about transient, you're not just talking about Canadians, you're talking about Australians, New Zealanders, and British really were the main transient people of the time. So these guys and girls would come at the time and they would come and they would live in Whistler. They would either live in staff housing or they would live like in random houses. But majority of the time, at least they were in Whistler. So the thing is we kind of took the playbook from what people were doing in Vancouver and Toronto in terms of flyering and postering, and we kind of elevated it because Whistler back then was like, it was for almost the whole time I was promoting in Whistler. Was you have to remember there was industry nights every night of the week. So Checks was Sunday, Monday was even Tommy's as well, which was old school 80s night or something like that. Tuesdays was Matt the Alien, Wednesdays was Beagle, Thursday was Garves. So like you were competing with like everyone went to those venues and lined up. They would be there at 7 to get into these venues. So you were fighting. So if you did a night on Tuesday, you were competing with Matt the Alien. And that's when I started doing my shows. But we just used the promotional tools that we had learned from all our friends, and we just handed out flyers and we just worked our magic. I would physically go to every store in Whistler and put up posters, talk to people, give them flyers. And then there was staff housing. So staff housing was holding thousands of people, right? It's like there were like these shitty accommodations with 4 people per room. And you weren't supposed to go in there if you didn't live there. But I would go in and I would literally knock on doors. I would put flyers under the door. And just so that the people that were partiers, and mostly the British and these people that were coming in were the ones that were getting the shit and getting the flyers and then coming out. So it was challenging, but you had to earn it. Like if I didn't earn it, I mean, I don't think I would have survived. But the real shows that I started doing were at Tommy's, and I didn't start doing shows until I actually left Whistler and went back to Vancouver, because I went to Vancouver to go to school for music business admin, and then I was like, okay, well, now I should start doing shows in Whistler, because now I was like an outsider. But that's when I was actually DJing, and before that I wasn't DJing at my shows. I was just booking the talent.
When you went to school and you were doing your studies for music business management, did you find yourself using a lot of what you
Mm-hmm.
were learning in school? Was it applied into what you were doing?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, it was a big eye opener. I mean, obviously until then, I mean, I went to school for culinary management things, and I was like learning as I was going. And at the time, I think the first like real promoter that I met back in the day was Nick Blasco. And Nick Blasco owns Atomic Productions of Victoria. Him and Dimitri have been running that for had been running it forever. But they're Nick is Tegan and Sarah's manager. He's like a big time manager in the industry. And I remember we did a Mixmaster Mike show at Merlin's, and it sold out. And me and Brandon back then, we were like fly by night, like go to the you do the show, you go to the bar owner, you get your money and you leave. But Nick and them had these like spreadsheets and these like, it was just so pro, and I was like, oh my god, like these guys know what they're doing, like we're so bush league up here. And then when I went to school, I learned a lot about contract management and marketing and communications, and that's when I would like got the spark. It was like, well, I need to do this thing in Whistler, and I need to do it right, and I need to start booking talent. And so yeah, like everything I learned was like, now okay, let's make it professional. Like let's try and do something for real, But I mean, the first night I did in Whistler, when I was living in Vancouver, I mean, the only reason I started DJing, and this is a funny story, was I mean, I had no intention of becoming a DJ. I never had thought of like, hey, I want to do this DJ thing. It would be cool because you guys were all so amazing. I didn't really need to. I'd just rather party, you know, like enjoy the night. But at the time, I think it was before I had moved to Vancouver, a guy that I knew owed me some money, and I lent him some money, and he wasn't returning my phone calls, so I was like, well, you know, you owe me this money. I need my money, man. And he was like, he just didn't return my phone calls. So there was no internet. It was like I had his number and whatever. Anyway, I found out where he lived, and I was choked. I was pissed because he wasn't returning my calls. So I just went to his house by myself, and I knocked on the door, and I was like, yo, what's up? His dad answered the door, and I was like, yo, is your son here? And he was like, yeah, just like, blah, blah, blah. Comes down, and his face drops, shits his pants. I was like, all right, cool. And I'm like, I'm going to take your turntables, and I'm going to take your records, and I'm going to go with them now. Your dad's going to help us. We're going to put him in my car, and I'm going to leave. And if you pay me my money, I'll give you your shit back. And so we did. I took all his stuff, put it in my car, and I left. And he shook his dad's hand. I said thank you, and stuff.
You're like the most chivalrous repo man ever.
Yeah.
Okay.
He didn't complain. I mean, he gladly handed it over, and I told him, I said, I'll give it back to you. You just got to give me my money, and he didn't give me my money. So I kept the stuff, and it was a small bag, and there was a lot of Aphrodite and a lot of stuff in there, but I was like, oh, cool. I'll learn how to DJ. And Brandon and the boys must have hated me because I played the same records, and I mixed. I mean, the same records over and over until I learned how to do it.
What were the records? What were the records? Were they mixed?
It
Were
was
they?
mostly Aphrodite stuff, like Jump Up Jungle stuff.
So you were
There was a
already
small
like you were into jungle as is, so you end up with this pile of records that were unknown to you, and then
yeah.
ends up working out that you like most of the records.
Oh, for sure. I knew he was a jungle DJ. I knew that he had jungle records, so that's why I took
Right.
the records too.
Was that inspiration for your choice to aim to for your collection to go for the turntables and the vinyl, knowing what was there?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. It had to be because I mean, I was a junglist from the day. The first time I heard Mickey Finn and Stevie Hyper D in '95, I was hooked. I was like, that's my DJ name came from Stevie Hyper D anyway. So it was just that was it. It was like, I mean, I'm a junglist through and through. Big up Whistler junglist, which is my hat.
Both.
Yeah, and so then I was DJing, and then I was like, I got to do this thing, and so when I started my DJ night at Tommy's, you know, it was like I just did this Tuesday night resident thing, and because I lived in Vancouver, I wasn't a local, so people didn't know me, so they thought I was just like this guy from Vancouver that was doing this big show, and honestly, it just went bananas. Like it was Tuesday nights. There was 200 people every single night or more, and I didn't even have headliners. I didn't even book anyone. I just booked myself, and I would go to the record shops in Vancouver, and I would like buy the freshest tunes of the week, and then I would show up and I would practice at home and make a bunch of wicked mixes, and then I would show up and just jam out, and then literally drive up and then drive back to Vancouver. And that's still when the highway hadn't been fixed. I mean, I'm surprised I'm not dead, Josh, because I mean, there was times where I was like driving back to Vancouver and there was shit coming out of the forest at me. I had to get out of the car and do laps around the car. And I had to go to school the next day. But at the same time, I was building like a scene around the jungle, and there were so many English kids there, like, you know, like did lighters, and like they were just, it was amazing. It was just like, it was so cool. But I also then started working with like DJ Logic at the time, DJ Fro, who started Whistler Junglist back in the day. After I kind of passed the torch to him, you know, Todd Ski, Plastic Surgeon. So all of these guys that were like decent DJs back in the day were then kind of opening up for me, and then, you know, I'd give them the headlining slot every once in a while if I couldn't make it or whatever. So that was kind of the beginning of getting into doing big shows. But I think the big shows really started, I guess I would say 2003, I guess, is when I started booking people.
Did you find that when you were doing all of this that there was a stronger pull towards DJing, or there was a stronger pull towards promotion? Did you find that they were both streamlined and working equally?
Yeah, I kind of just was just doing it all, you know. It was like it was just a part of it. I mean, I threw parties because I mean the real reason why I started, like I said, doing Jungle Embrace is because it didn't exist that much except for Check's Night in Whistler, and I really wanted to bring drum and bass and jungle to Whistler. So it was like that was my ultimate goal. It happened that I became a DJ, but then promotion became a thing because it was like then I learned how to do the business side of the promotion. So I never did it because I wanted, that was my ultimate job or anything. I really did it because I love the music. I love the energy. I love what 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 would come out of a night. It's like you promote a night, it goes off, it's successful. There's 300 people, everyone's stoked, you know, and you just leave and you're like, you're elevated, you know, you're like, well, now let's keep going and let's do another party at someone's house. But, you know, when I started doing stuff back in the day in Vancouver, I wasn't the only, I mean, in Whistler I was definitely the only, one of the only people I know, Vinyl Richie had done some drum and bass back in the day before I had got there. I mean, obviously checking his breaks, he was doing his thing. But you know, like Whitebird, John Whitebird, you know John Whitebird in Victoria, he was doing jungle and breaks the whole time.
What
You know,
about
Matty
Clay
C
Clay
and
over at
Shay.
was it Futuristic Funk? Was
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, they were doing drum and bass. I know, I mean, I know that because I did a show, I think it was called Seven Deadly Sins, and and Flipside and Freaky Flow were the headliners, and they had the main slot. Then yeah, that was all drum and bass. I'm just trying. I don't remember
Yeah,
the
yeah.
other people on the flyer, unfortunately.
Yeah, I mean it's a bit blurry for sure, but 2003 it kind of like it shifted and I was like, okay, now I'm booking people and I think one of the first persons that I booked was Marcus Visionary. Then I booked Mystical, Ill Fingers, Slip and Slide. Like I was Ryan Ruckus, you know, I was trying to bring the Toronto guys out. And the cool thing about obviously doing shows in Whistler is, as you know, there's a 2-hour drive back then. So the reality was I had to go pick these guys up. I had to go to the airport because I moved back to Whistler in 2002. So you had to go out, you get to know these guys, and it was such an amazing time, and we knew it was like a magical space in Whistler, and that everyone that came there would always have a good time. It was always back then it was guaranteed there would be at least 200 people at Tommy's for these nights. You know, it was like it was going to be the jam. These guys were going to have fun. You know, like and just trying to elevate the Canadian scene. And then, you know, in 2004 is kind of when it kind of launched to the next level for me and what we were doing, because at the time, I don't know how it happened, but I ended up booking the World of Drum and Bass tour with DJ SS. And I mean, if you want, I think that would be an amazing interview for you. Is I can get Leroy on the call. I mean, this guy is like the godfather of drum and bass
No, I
alongside,
would I would
you know,
absolutely love to sit down and talk
Ryder and
with SS. There's no doubt about it. It's not a tough sell. The what you were talking about though is it made me wonder a whole bunch of stuff. But did you find that there was a camaraderie amongst the promoters that you were communicating with, that you felt that the drive, that the push to do the shows was similar, that you find that there was a match when you were having any form of communication, that I love this so much, this is why I'm doing it, and then who you were speaking to, it would come back reciprocal. It would be like, I love this so much, that's why I'm doing it too. And then of course the money stuff, that the business of it, this came as a secondary thing. But your prime you
yeah.
weren't.
Yeah, yeah. Well, the money was never a thing for me anyway, because the thing at Tommy's, I was doing it for like a paycheck, like Check was doing. You know, when I started doing shows and then like realizing, okay, maybe I can maybe charge a cover and convince the club to give me that cover. So until I started doing nights and being like, hey, this is my night as a promoter. I mean, it was never about the money. It never was, because you know, for a long time it was just pay the DJ what we were getting, and we were jumping on tours with people like the guys that were doing stuff in Vancouver, and yeah, like it was all for the love of the music. It wasn't never about money, and never made any money from promoting. So, we weren't doing it big enough. We weren't doing festivals. We weren't doing, you'd make $2,000 one week and then you would lose $2,000 the next week. It was this evolution of, sometimes I was going to the bank machine, pulling out fucking a few $100s because I had to pay the DJ. I didn't make enough money. And it was all about the party, and it was all about, hey, let's throw an after party. And obviously there was benefits to throwing parties at our house and selling booze and stuff like that. So but it was definitely like, I think there was always a camaraderie between like Whitebird and the guys that were doing stuff in Vancouver, and even Groove Robber and ET Bros. They were always like the ones that they were just ambitious and wanted to do things, and the whole thing was just to please the scene, to create a scene, to create an environment, to create a place where people could go and share the plur, that peace, love, unity, respect. That's what it was all about. It wasn't about making money. It was never about that. But then when I met SS and he did the World of Drum and Bass show in 2004, it was Groove Rider, Twisted Individual, Killa Kella, that it essentially just changed my world. It changed my life in terms of my ability to do shows that could make money, because, like you do a show like that in Whistler, and like all the British kids were like lined up out the door. We never used to sell tickets in advance in Whistler. So that was the challenge, was that you never knew how many people were coming, because you didn't know if you didn't know until people showed up at the door, because you just didn't do pre-sale tickets. You promoted the hell out of it. You heard the vibe. You wish that people knew about it, but you didn't know. You really didn't know. So I would be biting my fingernails, like drinking too many Red Bull vodkas, just not knowing. Every time, most of the times, majority of the time, it was sold out. But you never knew. You had this $3,000-$4,000 bill that you had to pay SS and the Groove Rider and stuff, and you just didn't know if you were going to make that money. Like I didn't back then. I didn't have that kind of money to pay these guys. So. Yeah, it was really, really interesting. Yeah.
You eventually left Whistler.
Well, I did Whistler. I was a back and forth kind of guy. I did Whistler from 98 to 2000, 2002, Vancouver. Then I moved back to Whistler. And then at one point when I moved back to Whistler, we ended up starting Foundation Wednesdays, which was kind of after Tommy's. And we did it at Garf. So this was a big night. We started doing it with Smirnoff. So it was like the first sponsor I ever had. And but I kind of went all in. And Lindsay, she started Dirty Beats in 2005. Actually, the first show we ever did for Foundation Wednesdays, which we called it Foundations because we wanted to set the foundation for the jungle and break scene in Whistler. And we went in like straight up, like full on headliner almost every single week. We just went in straight up. And we did Stanton Warriors, DJ Rap, DJ Dan, Perfect Combination. We Darren J. We had Zen and Biggie, A-Sides, Malente. Like, so we were doing these big shows, but we were doing it every single week, and it was pretty good, like, because Garf's was like 300, 400, 500 people per night, so it was nice. But at the same thing, it was super stressful because you never knew how many people were going to show up. You never knew. You could work your ass off handing out flyers and going to staff housing and trying to work it. But that was fun. It was fun because at the time the scene was solid. Lindsay had started Dirty Beats, the record shop. So there was this kind of scene in Whistler where there was a place people could go and buy music. And it was really good. Yeah, it was nice. At the time it was pretty dope. And then, I ended up, in 2005, I think we did the World of Drum and Bass show with SF. I think Groove Rider played again, and then Groove Rider played in Vancouver. And at the time, I went to the show because I was touring with SS, and SS is just a beauty of a human being. I love the guy, Leroy Small. He's an amazing person and ambassador for drum and bass and jungle music, and he still is. He just released Back to Jungle Volume 2 yesterday. Wicked album, really nice. Anyway, and then I met my girlfriend at the time, Bree, who DJ B Traits, and then I ended up moving back to Vancouver, and then I started promoting in Whistler and Vancouver, and at the time I was doing this thing. It was like Mondays at Savage Beagle, which was super awkward because it's a Monday night in Whistler, but I still wanted to promote. But it was a time where whoa, what the hell is that?
Sounds like you're in a utility room.
Utility room. Yeah. So then it kind of broke me, bro, because I was doing these nights at Savage Beagle, in small little basement room. It was kind of ghetto. I had Plastic Surgeon, who's a wicked DJ. Check out his mixes on SoundCloud.
It's something that we actually didn't talk about because I feel like
Baby,
a lot of planet Earth probably knows
oh,
about Whistler. What
Caribbean.
do you got going on? Do you just negotiate round two or something?
Yeah, I'm trying to get a beer, bro.
All right, I'm sure it's going to work out for you in your favor. I think the whole world knows Whistler because, like, the Olympics, obviously. Uh, Also, world class destination for boarding and skiing, um, and a bunch of other stuff as well. I mean, now, I mean, everyone, yes, people know of Whistler, but back then, maybe not so much. And also, the I don't know how many nightclubs are in Whistler. If I was to guess right now, I'm going to say seven. Um, and the biggest one would probably be Garf's
It is, yeah.
with its 400 person or so capacity.
Yeah, for
Um,
sure.
and in each of these instances, it doesn't matter which club it is we're talking about, with the exception of the GLC, but this is more of an event center than a club. Each of the instances of the nightclubs, they're all underground, and I'm not trying to be clever like, hey, it's underground. I mean, like, it's underground. Like, you literally have to
Yeah.
walk down a
Yeah,
couple
you do. Yeah.
staircases to
Yeah.
get to these nightclubs. None of these nightclubs are above ground. All of them are underground, and it's on its own. I've always felt that when you've had to take a staircase to descend to go into something, like, that on its own is its own little vibe. You know what I mean? Like, before, it doesn't matter what the room opens up to, just that vibe of going down the stairs and
Yeah.
getting to that opening. When it opens up, it's the what is it? It's that cracker jack moment. Um, and it's one of the things that I've always loved about going to Whistler, whether it was to play or whether it was to party. It would be an opportunity to go down a flight of stairs and jump into a brand new adventure. And
Yeah.
I've had
Yeah.
some incredible some incredible times on that mountain. And at one point, as you know, I went up there. I lived there for about 10 months straight. Well, sort of. I mean, I was there 3 or 4 nights a week, and then the rest of the week I was somewhere else. And this was my wild trip because I was going up and down the mountain.
Yeah.
And so I, like you, actually started renting cars because the bus schedule wasn't suitable. A lot of the flights, so that I could
Yeah.
work it out in my favor, were either first thing in the morning or last one out at night, and there would be no buses at that time to get me to the airport because the check-in was 2 hours before the flight, and the
Yeah.
ride was 2 hours to the airport. So I had to calculate all this stuff in my brain to go up and down the mountain to be able to make the flight to ensure that I wasn't late, because missing flights is never a good time.
Well,
So
let's talk about. Are you going to go somewhere with this, or?
no, I want fucking
Well,
interrupt me and tell me where
I
you want
think
to
it's
go.
a funny story that would be very fun to share with your viewers. Do you remember? I might have been the day after Chet, but you you, you came to Whistler, or it might have been Alpro. I don't remember. But anyway, we went up the mountain, and we were going to ski and snowboard. And I was on my snowboard, and you were on your skis, and we got to the top of Whistler Mountain. We went to the peak, and it was a fucking shit day. Clouds were sopped in, and you were like, I mean, I'm a Whistler guy. I was like, yeah, fuck, he'll follow me. It'll be cool. It'll be no problem. And you started following me, and I was shoulder checking. Where's Josh? He's cool. He's cool. He's cool. He's skiing. And then you fucking bailed. Okay. And your fucking ski, like, you dispatched off your feet and just like launched over a cliff into the abyss. And you and I, like, I think spent an hour trying to find your ski. And you're like, why the
Because we
fuck
had to we
did you
had
get
to
up here,
talk.
you asshole? Fucking hate you, you prick. And you were so mad. And I was like, it's cool, bro. Like, it'll be fine. We'll like,
Because you did. You're like, listen, I'll just replace him, Josh. Don't worry about it. All right, let's. I'm like, how am I getting down on one ski? And you're like, that's the adventure. And you're trying to, like, put a positive spin on it. And I remember this. I knew. I was like, oh fuck. But then we did. We found the ski.
We found the ski in like
Yeah,
a weird. We found the ski.
we found the fucking ski. Yeah, and then we skied down the mountain.
Yeah,
Good
yeah.
times, Jamie.
It
Good
was.
times.
We've had many good times. You know, one person we haven't talked about, but who I think it was like your sidekick back day in the day was DeCozy, Mike. I mean, Mike, what a beauty. I mean, he transformed because he would play house and he'd play some techno but I was like, man, I mean, it didn't matter because I was junglist back in the day, but yeah, I still booked you and I still booked these other guys and I was like, I mean, the best of the best at what they do and I want everyone else to share the vibe of what these guys can bring to the table. And good old DeCozy and his poppers, man, he's so funny. Smelling
So
fucking
tell
leather.
tell tell us tell us what you're doing right now. What are you up to right now?
Oh man, right now I'm talking to you, drinking a beer. No,
I
but
don't mean utility room, brother.
I'm not in
Because
my.
you're not in Whistler anymore. I know
No,
that.
no, I
I know you're
did.
not in Whistler, and
My,
you're not part of like J and B is no more. I mean, are you and Brandon
well,
ever going
to
to
be
throw another party
honest,
again? I can't even ask that question. Brandon's off cooking for movie stars, and you're like fucking killing it at. This is your cue.
Moment Factory. No, but no. Well, my progression out of the promotion, it was like a 10-year stint. Literally, I started doing my thing in Whistler, promoting shows, went to school, but even in the early days, I started doing like the um, kind of like big scale, big shows in Whistler, World Ski and Snowboard Festival, Wake Fest in Kelowna. And I started working for a company, TNT Productions, out of Vancouver Island. And I kind of was always, as I was doing my stuff, I was still had my fingers in the entertainment industry. And that went straight up until 2010 before the Olympics came. I started doing, but I started backing out of it after the Savage Beagle night in 2006. Lindsay kind of took over, and her and Corey K were doing some stuff in Whistler. They were bringing up the big break shows, Crafty Cuts, and the freestylers, like the guys that were friends of mine back then. But they were doing those shows, and then I got transitioned to the action sports world, but more the entertainment side of that. And then I evolved into the Olympics, and I actually got my first big gig with the Vancouver Olympics, 2010, and that was my like eye opener. Like that's what I wanted to do, and I was on the production of opening closing ceremonies, and that company that hired me for that gig actually brought me to Qatar in 2012 for the Arab Games, and then I ended up working on the Olympics in Sochi in Russia. I did that in 2013. I moved to Russia. I lived in Russia for a year and a half. I lived in Moscow for a year, and then Sochi for another 6 months, which is unbelievable. And then it progressed, and I moved to Toronto. I did the Pan Am Games opening closing ceremonies, and then I moved to Montreal and lived and worked and had a baby, amazing baby boy Ziggy, who's 5 now, and now I work in still. I feel like it's still the entertainment world, Josh, because I'm basically producing multimedia night walks in the forest. So we're using light, sound, projection, and we're creating magical, wonderful worlds for people all over the world. I'm doing a show right now in Shanghai. I was actually in China in January, which is fucked up because that's the birthplace of COVID, but that's where I was in January. I spent a month in China, and I'm doing another gig there. We have 3 gigs in Japan. We actually have one in Vancouver, in Whistler, actually called Valet Illumina. So yeah, my life continually is still in the entertainment world, just on a different perspective. It's pretty amazing. I'm very blessed to have the job I have, for sure.
Where is there ever a pull? Do you ever feel like where you're ever just at a moment you're like, damn, I want to throw another jam again?
Yeah, well, I did actually. The funny thing is when I 2000, what would it have been, 2016, SS, who's still a good friend of mine, was like, let's throw this. We're doing World of Drum and Bass. I want to come to Montreal, and I was like, all right, let's do this. Like let's get back on this promotion train. And I was really excited about it. And we actually brought SS. It was SS prototype. Who else came? I can't remember. Then I did my first jam. Like I promoted it. I paid for it. And Montreal's not a big drum and bass scene though. It was like, it was another Wednesday or Tuesday. It wasn't a Friday or Saturday. And I ended up doing that first jam. It was okay. We didn't lose money, but we didn't make money. And then I was like, you know what? I'm out. And I passed the torch to a good friend of mine here in Montreal, and they started a company called Mount Rumble, actually. Sorry, and they're still doing it to the day. Actually, and I contribute a bit. I pay for hotels. I try to help them out as much as I can because SS is my bro to make the gigs go well. But the last gig before COVID was World of Drum and Bass in Montreal. It was on I think it was on the Tuesday last year, and SS and the team played in Montreal, and they canceled their Toronto gig the next day because everything shut down because of COVID. So we had a wicked night. But it's tough because it's like you want it to be the biggest and best thing. You want drum and bass and jungle. You want everyone to understand why you do it, and it's such an important music in the world. But everyone doesn't understand it. And then in Montreal, it's such a small scene that you can get some big shows, but it has to be on a Friday or Saturday, I would say. So I did get the itch, but I lost a bit of money, over the last few years, but it wasn't because I was committed 100%. But I mean, I'm not young anymore. I don't want to go out and hand out flyers and talk to people, and I'm not in the scene per se, that you need to do that. You need to be a committed, ambassador to the scene to be able to make something super successful, I think. So, yeah.
After all this time has passed, if you were to go ahead and step up to the decks, be Jungle Souljah, play
Yeah.
another set, there'd be
Yeah.
3 records that you could pick that would be in your bag. If there are 3 records that you would rely on to know that no matter what, they're going to light up the dance floor. It's either in a situation for emergency rescue, oh my gosh, this isn't working out, or it's already going and be like, yeah, let's just go again. What are these 3 records?
Okay. Good question. I thought you might ask that question. Well,
It is a utility room question.
yes, it is very well. I would say, Every Day by Shy FX and Top Cat. It's always a classic. Nails the dance floor every time. It's a pretty new track. It's not super old. It's not even a white label. It's a yellow label. It's called Don't Get Me Wrong by Ray Keith. Wicked female vocals and some wicked Oraga jungle vocals as well. Nails it every time. You can Google it. It's not a record that came out, but I and Ray Keith, wicked track. And then I would say, I originally it was Benny Page, Turn Down the Lights. Like I could play that track anywhere, and if I was like losing the dance floor, I would play on Turn Down the Lights and turn down the lights. Oh, turn down the light, and every fucking dance floor would pack. Right? Like it was one of those jams. But then I recently, like I just bought, because I don't play digital music. I've never played digital music, Josh. I don't even know how. I only play vinyl. I have 2,000 vinyl records. And I started buying Discogs records. And the one that I will always play now, every single set, is Fire, obviously, Urban Shakedown. It's a Demolition Man, Fire, Mickey Finn, Aphrodite. It's a 1995 remix. I mean, it was just, that shit is just a gem. I mean, fire, we're burning the place down. Like that shit. It gets me every time. It gives me the chills when you hear. So those, I would say, are the 3 for sure. I mean, there's Incredible, which is it's just an insane track, but it's not everyone can feel that track. I think it's my favorite jungle track of all time. But yeah, I mean, I got my DJ name from Mickey Finn, because Mickey Finn, or not Mickey Finn, Stevie Hyper D. I mean, he rest in peace, Stevie Hyper D. I mean, he used to play in Toronto. The boys used to book him in Toronto, and he used to have this rhyme, and it was like Inta Outa Jungle Souljah, and I was like, that's my DJ name, and I added the SOUL because you remember my dog Soul. She was a traveling soul that entered my life, so I changed Soldier to SOUL. Yeah, yeah. Those are the three jams for sure.
I got one last question for you, um, and it's one that I'm curious about your opinion. What would you say is the differences between drum and bass and jungle?
Well, it's a good question, Josh. I mean, jungle is jungle. I mean, it's the rhythm, it's the hi hats, it's the bass lines, it's the raga influence for me. Jungle is jungle music. I mean, it's like this, like it feels like you're in a fucking jungle. You just want to jam. But drum and bass for me is more produced, more electronic. I guess I would say. You know, it's more the fluid style of drum and bass versus jungle, which is that raga. I mean, the jungle for me is raga. You know, it's that raga influence where it's like it's super heavy. You know, the shit that Machete would play, Raw, B-Boy 3000. That's jungle. And then drum and bass is everything else for me. I mean, I don't know if you heard the album Return to Jungle. I think I shared it with you when I heard it by Chase and Status, the one where they made a reggae album and then they actually produced a drum and bass, a jungle album, uh, but never released a reggae album. That's jungle, you know. And then there's drum and bass. It's all the other, you know, elements of what jungle or drum and bass can be. But jungle is that. I think jungle is raga influenced. You know, it's that reggaeton that really drives you and is like just loose and crazy and just so bananas that you just like you lose your shit. You know, you want to fucking act like an ape. Like,
Do you know what? I think that I think that throughout all of this, what I'm really hearing is that even though you're not there, you're still there. That's what I'm
mm,
hearing. And and that, even though that your involvement is not right at the forefront, that you still feel involved. And it makes me wonder because you say, I'm too old now to go into that realm and do this thing. But then I also think to myself, from my perspective, is it ever too late? You know, you know,
yeah, never
it
know. I
no,
get the itch, bro. I still get the itch. So like I
of
still
course not, of course not. I
yeah,
mean,
I
like,
see what yeah, I see what you're doing and I see what you know Crafty's doing and I mean I've got a playlist on Spotify Jungle Soldier
we've
the
got him
same name.
coming in. I am stoked for that episode.
Yeah, I mean
Yeah, Crafty
I love
catches
it. I think
Crafty
I
catches
still
some
listen
juice
to it
later.
daily. I listen to Jungle daily. I listen to Drum Bass daily. I listen to Breaks daily. I try and keep up the best I can. I mean, the itch is not gone. I wish I could. I mean, I wish I but I'm working 50, 60 hours a week doing these Illumina things around the world and but I still think like maybe when this COVID thing is over and we're all back to normal, I would love to bring out Crafty. I would love to bring out yourself. I'd love to bring out you know, freestylers. I would like love to do these shows, do again World of Drum and Bass, and I don't think that itch is ever gone. It's just how implicated am I in the scene that I can actually achieve it. But with regards to the internet and the promotional tools that are available, I think anything is achievable. It's like what I do a Tuesday,
Sure,
Wednesday, Thursday. No, I mean I want to do a Friday, Saturday. Like I don't want to fuck around. Like if we're gonna do it, let's do it big and let's do it fucking proper. And
but
SS, bring
mechanics
me the
aside,
guy.
Jamie, I mean,
Yeah,
just move
yeah.
all the mechanics aside for a second and think to yourself that maybe at one point it made sense to go ahead and juggle all of these chainsaws, but now maybe to relinquish just a bit of the responsibilities over to someone else. It seems like you already started doing that with the last effort at World of Drum and Bass.
Yeah.
So maybe you're wearing the big hat, but you're not juggling all of it at the same time. And
No,
you
no,
you
no, for sure. Scott F's with Royal Mount Rumble would totally be down, and I would totally jump right back in, no problem. You know, it's just that fucking feeling of not knowing or understanding the market and having your fingers in the hat and understanding the players and what's happening is yeah.
Well, it's wonderful to hear you say that, and it's exactly how I'd love to wrap up this episode. The reason what you were just saying, and the unknown of it, and that not knowing what was going on, you'd feel more of a risk now, perhaps, than you did before. And what that risk assessment is and where that handles in your brain on how you're managing it, how to proceed, is really that's perhaps what the answer is out of all of it, is how to figure out that risk assessment. Because hearing your story earlier on when you were in Whistler, going up there and with Brandon, and you guys were, running, just running, as you were saying, like, all of it through the proceedings of it, it sounded very whimsical, and that the leading of it was your heart, the passion towards the music,
For
your
sure.
wanting to share drum and bass. So
Yeah.
if that was true then, would this not be true now? And
Hmm.
it's one of the deep thoughts that I would love to leave you with for sure. And I also want to say that it was really awesome having you with me tonight, man. It's good to see you.
Well, you know what? I'm so proud of you, Josh, and everything that you're doing. And thank you for educating the youth, but us old schoolers, and sharing and telling stories. It's been a whirlwind of a few weeks, actually, to tell you the truth, because I've been thinking about it. I've been thinking about speaking to you, and I've been thinking about all the times we've shared. And it's 20 years ago, it's 20, 25 years ago that shit was happening. And, I wouldn't be here today if it wasn't for guys like you, if it wasn't for someone like Wayne Mealing, Aaron Mix, the guys that were showing me the way and representing and building a scene that we could all build our foundation on, like that was the jam. Those guys like inspired me and showed me the light at the end of the tunnel, and motivated me to want to continue that process, like Mystical and Sniper, those guys in Toronto, Ruckus, all those guys that were doing things, and they were doing it for the love of the music. The passion that those guys had for what they were doing inspired me to move forward and continue what I was doing. And that's what it's all about. It's about making people happy. Promoting was never about making money. It was always about, what are people going to walk out of that club, look at me and go, thank you, that was a dope night. That was enough. If I made money or not, it didn't really matter. It was like, if people were happy, and I like they were inspired to do something cool, or be better people. I mean, that was what it was all about. Like, music was just an envelope. The outcome was people would be better people, and enjoy life, and their shitty days would be inspired by good music.
I do.
I think that's
Thanks.
why you do what you do, man. You know, that's why you do what you do. And big
I
up to Rob
I
G. I don't know if we spoke much about Rob. I mean, Rob is doing his thing these days, and it's inspiring to watch him on LinkedIn. And he's a Barry boy. Well, he's an Angus boy, but it's nice to see everyone succeeding at life, and doing things because of maybe that rave time that we had, and the energy that we shared, and the love that we shared, and for all the right reasons. You know what I mean? We inspired each other, and we wanted to be better people and do things for each other. So that's super important. It's interesting because as a promoter, you're almost like you have a responsibility to educate people on best practices of life, and being happy and being inspired. And music is at the heart and soul of that. So I just wish that everyone would love jungle music. My son loves jungle music, so that's cool.
Do you
Yeah.
have any mixes or anything before we close out? Is there someplace if someone here goes some classic jungle Soldier? And if the
No,
answer is no,
I
let this
don't.
be the fire underneath your ass.
There's some stuff up there, but like I said, I'm a vinyl guy, and I play every once. I was doing some Twitch stuff back, during COVID last year, and I put a couple things up, but Twitch took it down because
Wait a
of
second.
copyright.
Last year, we're still in it, man.
Yeah, 2020 I did some stuff, but they
Last
took
year, isn't
Twitch
it
only
still
lasted
last year?
a
Oh,
little
it's
bit.
this year. Which year? It's the
Yeah,
longest year
it
I've
just,
ever known.
you know what? Check out Jungle Soldier, the way that it's spelled, Souldier on Spotify. I have a playlist up, and I'm always adding tunes to it, and that's at least you can listen to the freshest and latest of the jungle and breaks that I'm listening to in the world, and trying to promote some of my friends. So
Send me
yeah,
that playlist so I can follow it. I'd like that, please.
yeah, some good shit on there for sure.
Absolutely awesome sauce. Hearing all the adventures of Western Canada up in the mountains from Barrie to Toronto to Vancouver and then up to Whistler. With us in the utility room tonight, sharing all of these adventures, is Jungle Souljah. This is the utility room. You are absolutely awesome sauce. Thank you very much for tuning in, and we'll see you next
Awesome.
week.
Big up Whistler Junglist, Justin Hepburn, Mason, still rolling down.